Greetings from the Jazz Cloud. This is Richie Zellon, and in this video I bring you the first in a series of 10 tips to improve your jazz guitar solos. Tip number 1, stop thinking in scales. And let me show you how the great jazz players do it instead. Coming up next. Welcome back to the Jazz Guitar channel, and if this is your first time and you want to learn all about the art of playing jazz guitar, you've come to the right place. I bring you weekly lessons covering everything from bebop to post-bop to Brazilian jazz and much, much more, all from a guitar perspective. So I want to encourage you to subscribe and be sure to click the bell icon so you won't miss anything. Today, the majority of guitarists who transition into jazz do so from the rock and blues world and hold a monophonic perspective when soloing. This is because a single scale, particularly a pentatonic, is the main focus when soloing over an entire chord progression. So having said all of this, my goal in this lesson is to help you shift your scale paradigm when improvising and replace it with a new one, the arpeggio paradigm. So in a nutshell, unlike most pentatonic-based rock and blues, we need to focus on the arpeggio of each and every chord in a progression when improvising over a jazz standard. No, we don't determine the key center for the tune and then simply play the major scale pertaining to the one chord for the entire progression. We actually outline each and every chord's arpeggio and use the scale as a reference point to determine what notes we can use to target the arpeggio chord tones we are resolving to. These are what we call approach tones. This is where it may get somewhat confusing for some, and you may be thinking, but you said not to use the scale. No, I didn't say not to use the scale. I said not to think in scales. In other words, we have to think in terms of the 1, 3, 5, and 7, which is the arpeggio. In spite of the fact that these 4 notes are within a given scale, we are framing them as our central focus when soloing instead of the entire scale. The remaining notes in the scale, the 2, the 4, and the 6, are used as approach tones to create motion or as upper extensions whenever available. If we run scales and rest on some of the non-chord tones, they may clash with the current harmony. On the other hand, if you focus on the arpeggio as your targets, you can't go wrong in that respect. And by the way, this paradigm shift needs to take place if we ever want to create polyphonic jazz, or what most guitarists call chord melody. And I know everything I said sounds very conceptual and academic to some, so next I'm going to do some playing and show you the difference between thinking in scales and thinking in arpeggios. And you'll notice that running scales creates a substantial amount of harmonic ambiguity. And this is further revealed when we strip a solo of its accompanying chords. I am going to solo over a particular chord progression, just thinking in scales. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you tell what progression I was soloing over? I doubt it. It could be many different ones. So let's hear that solo again with the chords in the background this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it makes more sense. It's a 1-6-2-5 progression, such as in rhythm changes. It's It's a weak solo and can't stand on its own because it doesn't portray the changes. Let me emphasize that. We need to imply the changes, the chord changes in our solos. The solo we just heard is what we call an overly horizontal approach because it is very scalar. In other words, the solo consists almost exclusively of stepwise motion. In jazz, a good solo is centered around the arpeggio, which in turn results in a more vertical approach. And this allows us to hear the intended chord changes even without the accompaniment. So let me solo over the same progression, focusing on the arpeggios instead of the scales. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here it is with the chord changes in the background. 2, 3, 4. What a difference, eh? It's all in how you frame the notes. So yes, it helps to know where those 3s and 7s are located. And this is where an understanding of theory is crucial. If you want some excellent examples of master musicians applying this mindset, just listen to any saxophone trio album where the horn player is playing with only an upright bass and a drummer. Some of my favorites are Lush Life by John Coltrane, State of the Tenor by Joe Henderson, A Night at the Village Vanguard, Sonny Rollins, Trilogy by Kenny Garrett, and Motion by Lee Konitz. All these recordings, if you are familiar with the standards being played, in all of them you'll be able to infer the chord changes from the predominantly vertical approach employed during the solos. However, a word of caution before proceeding. Although the arpeggio is the main focus here, that does by no means signify that jazz players entirely ignore the horizontal perspective or the scale when improvising. A good solo is a balance between vertical and horizontal movement. To conclude, let me give you a final illustration of this concept. And this is an excerpt of a Charlie Parker composition. So first I'm going to just play the framework, that is the arpeggio notes in the phrase. And you're going to see how in the second part I'm going to add the actual fillers, the scale notes, and you're going to see how everything comes alive. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's hear it with the complete phrase. Let's hear it in context. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's Charlie Parker's Anthropology. So that covers my first tip. Some of you will have to learn all your arpeggios inside out for all the different chord families. And if you need help, I've got 2 comprehensive online courses and 6 books at the moment that will help you achieve this step by step. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. There is a method to this madness we call jazz improvisation. Check out the Bebop Guitar Improv series. And I have placed a link below in the info section for your convenience. In the next lesson, I will show you how to determine what notes we can insert between the arpeggio tones to add some horizontal motion and create some great lines. Don't miss tip number 2. Love to hear your comments as usual and welcome any questions you may have. Hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and be sure to click on the bell icon so you won't miss anything. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.